In this video, we're going to record some logarithm rules that are going to be very helpful in our derivatives that we're going to be looking at next. So, review of log rules. There were three basic log rules that we need to talk about. The first one is usually referred to as the product rule. Now, these names are very easily mixed up with the derivative names for rules we have. For example, we have a product rule for derivatives. But notice, these are not calculus rules. These are just algebraic logarithm rules of how to break a logarithm apart. So it says, if you have a product of two things inside of a logarithm, you can break it up. You take the log of each term and you add them together. The next one is called the division or the quotient rule for logarithms. And it says if you have a quotient, a fraction, inside of a logarithm, you can break it up. You take the log of the top minus the log of the bottom. Always top minus bottom. Be careful with that. And the last rule you might remember is the power rule for logarithms. Power rule for logarithms says if you have inside of the logarithm a base to a power, then that power you can take and put in front of the logarithm as you see here. Now, the benefit of these rules is it allows us to take what could be one complicated problem and break it up into multiple small problems. Because when you have addition and derivatives, you look at each term separately for finding the derivative. That is what we're getting out of the product and the quotient rule. For the power rule, these powers are just numbers typically, so you'll just end up with a constant multiple. Occasionally, this power could be a variable. When you bring it down, you're avoiding a situation that we don't know how to deal with in many cases. If you have, for example, a base to another power, both being variables, we don't have any rules to deal with that. So that is a very big case of where we would use a log rule to help us. And you're going to see an example of that later. All right, so let's just practice the algebra here. So there's no calculus in this video. It's just a review of the logarithm rules from algebra. All right, so expand the following using log rules. So look at this problem and determine whether this is an application of product, quotient, power, or a combination of the three, or any two of them. So when you look at this problem, we have a logarithm, and all of this is inside that single logarithm. All right. What is the glue holding those insides together? What's the operation between all these terms? So we have a parenthesis squared and a parenthesis to the fifth. Between them is a product. Now, in this case, you also have power on each of these parentheses, but you can't do the power rule first because it's not on everything. The power rule would have you bring the 2 in front, which basically says the power is on everything. And it's not here. It's only on these parentheses individually. So in this case, we are going to do the product rule for logarithms. So y, not y prime, this is just algebra, equals ln. What does a product rule say? When we have a product of two terms, you take the ln, or the log. Remember, ln and log are the same thing. They're just different bases. X minus 3 squared plus, don't forget to put ln on the other term, x minus 1 to the fifth. Now that you've broken it up, ask yourself if you can break it up anymore. Do any of these logarithm rules apply still? Well, when I look at it, I say, okay, now this power is on everything in the log, so now the power rule can be applied to each of these powers. So that's what we're doing here. Again, this is just algebra. So y equals, the 2 comes down, it multiplies by the ln, plus the 5 comes down and multiplies by the ln. So this is the algebraic rewriting using the log rules of that problem. This is actually so much easier to take the derivative of. The original one would be very complicated, which we haven't even talked about how to deal with ln. So you'll see when we get to that. All right, let's try another one. So we're just practicing the algebra here, trying to get a grip on these log rules from, hopefully, log rules that you've seen in your past. So same thing here. We're trying to expand this. One problem is super complicated in terms of taking derivative. So we're going to try and break it up using the addition and subtraction that comes with the product and the quotient rule. And also bringing the powers down. All right, so look at this problem. What is overall holding everything together? Well, in this case, everything inside the logarithm has this root on it. But we don't have a rule for root, so what do? Rewrite the root as a power. So I'm going to bring, instead of a third root, I'm going to write a 1/3 power. Okay. Now, you have a choice. That 1/3 you could distribute to everything inside, or you can use the power rule for logarithms. This power is on everything, so according to the power rule of logarithms, that power can come down and go in front. So this is 1/3 times the ln of, well, that giant mess there. X minus 2 all over x squared plus 1. All right. Well, we still have a big term inside the ln. Let's look at it and see if we can break it up. Well, we have a multiplication here, so we have a product. But that product is on top of a division or a quotient rule. Which one do we do first? Well, what I would like to do is I would actually like to present to you a trick. If you have a situation, remember log, ln, they're the same thing, they're both logarithms, just different bases. If you have a situation where you have products and quotients in the same problem, there's actually a little bit of a shortcut to figuring this out. Anything on top is going to have a positive logarithm. Anything on the bottom is going to have a negative logarithm. So this would be log of the A plus log of the B. So notice I broke up the product using the product rule minus log of the C. The C is a negative because he's in the denominator, and also the D. Now I could prove this to you, which would be interesting, but normally I would do that in the class where we learn this. All we're really doing is reviewing these concepts. So this is a rule that you could use to help you if you have multiple products and quotients going on. Top terms all get positive logs, bottom terms all get negative logs. So we do the same thing here. So y equals, we have the 1/3, be careful, it's times everything, so let's put some brackets here. ln, the x is on top, so he's going to get his own positive logarithm, plus, because we have another term on top, ln of x minus 2, minus ln of the denominator. Because it's coming from the bottom, he gets a negative sign. And there you have the expansion. One thing you should ask yourself is if you could expand further. In this case, I'm referring to the x squared term. Can you factor this? In many of our problems, you will be, well, not many, but some of our problems you might be able to factor. So question, can you factor this? In this case, we'd have to say no, because this is a sum of squares, which is not factorable. Now, if you wanted to, you could expand the 1/3, or distribute the 1/3 to each term, but that is up to you. I would actually say that this is very nice the way it is. All right? So that's our second example. All right, here is another example. So what log rules could we use to simplify this? Well, holding everything together, I see a quotient, but then in the denominator, what do we have? A product. So this is another case where we can use my little shortcut in the red box. And I want you to pause the video and I want you to try this one. See if you can expand it and then come back and watch the video to make sure you got it right. All right, so if you tried it, let's do it. So the rule in my red box says anything from the numerator, so the 1 in this case, is going to get its own positive logarithm, minus, because we're going to the denominator, ln of x, minus ln of the square root of x plus 1. Are we done? Almost. We have one more thing we could do. We can get rid of the square root. Well, the easiest way to do that is to write it as a power. Remember, square root is the power of 1/2. So this 1/2 power can come down and go in front of the ln. So y equals, let's do that term, negative, the 1/2 comes down, ln of x plus 1. So that term is fully expanded as far as the log rules are concerned. All right, the middle term, ln of x, Can't really do anything there. ln of 0, what is that? I mean, ln of 1. Does anybody know what the value of ln of 1 is? Is that something we know or can calculate or what? Well, I'll give you a hint. You have a button on your calculator you can actually use to check your work. This is equal to 0, so that is gone. That's one you probably want to memorize. ln of 1, log of 1, anything, is going to have a value of 0. So that is your expanded and simplified form. And that was your basic review of the log rules. Like I said, we're going to use this a lot in the next derivative topic. So practice these, and I'll see you in the next video.